Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm super excited for Leanne's workshop. This is going to be super interesting. We haven't done a mock interview style workshop, so I'm super excited to see how this goes. And Leanne's a phenomenal guest speaker, so I'm excited about her doing a takeover as well. For those of you that are joining us here new to Mintbean, I want to sort of give you a little bit of a rundown before I pass over the mic. Let's start with names. My name is Navi. Um, I'm usually your host for these workshops as well as the learnathons. And a little bit about the Mintbean learnathons. If you're not familiar with them already, we host, I think I would be a little remiss to not talk about the Mintbean learnathons. We host learnathons every single week. We present a new challenge every single week. We have built these learnathons specifically in keeping in mind the junior developer experience, particularly from graduation to their first opportunities. And we noticed that there was a gap in the market where there are a lot of places online where there's tutorial videos and you sort of get trapped into tutorial hell. We wanted to create a space that allowed you to really learn by doing and build strong coding habits. And that's really what the Mintbean Learnathons are. We give you a full suite of user requirements with every single prompt that we put up, as well as sometimes we make recommendations on libraries. We often even give starter packs, so I highly recommend that you guys, if you haven't already, join a learnathon. And that's it for my plug. And now I'd love to introduce Leanne. Leanne, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we get started, I'd love to know, can you, if you don't mind sharing with the audience, what your current role is?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having us again here. We love being a part of all of these workshops with you guys as well as the hackathon. So thanks for having us. Yeah, so my name is Leanne Edwards, and I do work for App Academy as a behavioral coach. So what that means is I do a lot of the behavioral interviewing prep. So I work with a caseload of job seekers who graduate through our boot camp. We have online, our hybrid, and our in-person, if you will. And all three of those programs, I kind of work across all three verticals, and we all kind of help each other out internally, which is awesome. We have a great team. And one of the biggest things that we focus on is interview prep. So just being really prepped for your interview. And so that's where I come in. That's where I love to shine. I have a recruiting background. So I think I take the interview prep really serious. So that's my role at App Academy.
Awesome. That's a great segue because I wanted to ask you about your recruiting background and how you got into your current role. So if you don't mind sharing with us that 15 years of technical recruiting background, that would be awesome too.
Yeah, man, that makes me feel old. So I do have about 15 years of technical recruiting experience. I started my career out at Aerotech. I then worked for a smaller company, kind of hiring everything from paralegals to surveyors, you name it. And then I started with a software company, and it was a startup. I had no idea what software even was, and they kind of threw me on the team. We had some incredible goals in order to keep our government contract that we had. So I want to say we hired about 250 engineers in less than 2 years. It was kind of a blur, but a lot of fun. And I got to learn a ton about software. And I realized that in sitting in these interviews and helping to build internal software, I really loved the technical part of recruiting. And so that's where I kind of made that my niche.
Mm,
I went out on my own once we got acquired by Booz Allen and decided to spin off my own recruiting company, which I did for 6 or so years, focusing on really difficult technical roles all over the world, actually.
mm,
And then also teaching organizations how to hire on culture first.
mm,
And so I then, during 2020, happened to talk to someone from App Academy, and they had offered me a position to come on as a behavioral coach. And I thought It was perfect alignment with my tech background and what I really love to do, which isn't recruiting. I don't love recruiting. I love life coaching and career coaching and helping people land that job.
Awesome. And weren't you also on a TV show, if I remember correctly?
Yes, a couple years ago, I was on a reality show, which is really funny because I don't even watch TV and I have like no background. I had no right to be there, but I was there for a recruiting reality show, and we stayed in Jackie Chan's house in Miami, right on the water, which was really fun. Yeah, it was a crazy week. There was probably 9 or 10 recruiters competing. We were there for a full week. We had in-house chefs and makeup artists and people doing our hair, and it was 24 hours a day. It was intense. It was a good memory for sure. I did not win, but I have some really good memories from that opportunity.
That is pretty cool. I don't think a lot of people can say that they lived in a Jackie Chan house. So that's awesome. I think that's a win. So um all right, I'm gonna shut up and let you lead. And I'm sure everyone wants to hear more from you. And let's get started.
Awesome. Yeah, let's do it. So, I also wanted to introduce Drew here as well. He is the poor soul that has obliged to help me out today because he is a job seeker that I am working with right now who is actively interviewing. I'll tell you more about him as we get rolling, but he is on the call as well. And so, to Navi's point, we've never done this before either. This is a first trial, and we're excited to be here. We're excited to do this with you guys today. And so, what we were hoping to do is I've got a couple slides I want to go through, nothing too boring, just really quick high level overview of what we're talking about today and why we're here. And then the fun part is I'm going to interview Drew as if we're going to use Spotify today, as if I were the recruiter from Spotify and Drew is Drew. And we are going to kind of go back and forth. And then I'm hoping to open the floor and let you guys ask any questions that you have. So if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and then Drew and I will get to them as soon as we have an opportunity. We may run a few minutes over. So hopefully that doesn't happen. But if it does, just a heads up, we might kind of go over till about 2:15. So let's get rolling. Um, while I'm pulling up the couple slides that I do have, I would love for everybody to put in here where you're from, if you just graduated from a boot camp, and if you're currently in the job search, in no order, nothing fancy, just kind of drop in some background info on who you are and why you're here today, and maybe even what you are struggling with currently with interview prepping, or how maybe you're getting, far along in the interview process and then all of a sudden things are falling to the ground and you're not making it any further. So just share with us kind of what you're going through in the chat. And so let me just share my screen here and we will get rolling. All right, well, someone give me a thumbs up that you can see my screen. Perfect, thank you. All right, let's do this. So you are here today to learn about how to crush your interview prep. And you've probably heard the term before, work hard, work smarter, not harder. And it's true here with the interview prep as well. There's very specific ways in which you can go about interviewing for any company. All of these tactics are going to work for you. And so you want to get really, really good at the interview prep. I promise you, in all of the people over the last 15 years that I have helped get jobs, the reason that those people have landed those jobs is because they have crushed the interview process. If you can't get past the first interview, you can't get to the second interview, right? So there's a lot of tips and tricks in here that will help you with no matter what phase you're in and or regardless of what company you are interviewing for. Okay, so I didn't have enough time to put a picture of Drew up here, and I really wanted to, but I I will tell you about myself quickly, and then actually I'll let Drew introduce himself so that I don't butcher it. But this is me. These are my two dogs. Let's talk about them first because they are the most amazing. I have two chow chows. The one on the right is the girl. Her name is Kai, and the one on the left is the boy, and his name is Amos. They are brother and sister. They're about a year apart, and I am definitely an obsessed dog mom. On the left here, that is just a picture of me a couple years ago. I wrote my first book on culture driven recruiting. You can find it on Amazon as well. And it teaches you how to build a culture from the ground up that is sustainable and focuses on retention. And so I currently live in Charleston, South Carolina. I'm from Boston originally. And right now, you wouldn't know it, but I am on vacation in Florida. I'm here for the week visiting some friends and just kind of taking some downtime to read and relax and hopefully get some sunshine. So thank you guys for having me. And Drew, I will kick it over to you to just give a quick intro.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Drew. I currently am in Alabama because that's where my sister lives, and she just had a baby. But I typically live in New York City. I've lived in New York for about 8 years now. I went to college there, and then after school, I started in marketing for the past 4 years. I recently graduated from App Academy, like a lot of you, it looks like in the chat. And yeah, I'm really excited to be working with you all today. Thanks, Leanne, for bringing me on to do this.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Drew. And I forgot to mention at the beginning, we are recording this. So if anybody does not want to be on here, just feel free to turn your camera off. All right, so let's get rolling. So, one of the biggest things that I'm seeing out there right now as a behavioral coach is a lot of times you'll get through the boot camp, you'll get through the really, really hard part, right? That is going through the 100 or more hours of coding and racking your brain and staying up all night. And I feel like when you get to the job search, it's almost like the training wheels fall off, right? And it's a really, really sometimes scary place to be. And so I put here, I love Oprah. I don't know who doesn't love Oprah, but sometimes I feel like when you are giving your personal pitch to people, their first response is, "Wait, what did you just say?" There's just a lot of information overload, right? You might practice your personal pitch a couple times, and it might not come out exactly as you want it to. Maybe your strengths you don't know them, or your weaknesses are all over the place, and so it's a very overwhelming place to be. And the one thing that I can say is that everybody goes through this. You graduate boot camp, you think you're ready to go, and then you hit this wall where you're like, "Oh my god, I'm on my own now and I have to get a job. This is scary." So, I feel your pain. I know where you're at, and Drew and I are going to help you really identify where to go from here, right? And how to knock every interview out of the park moving forward. Okay, so your next hour, we're going to have just a quick agenda here. This is what we're going to go through. And the most exciting part of this entire presentation is going to be Drew. I am going to interview him and we're going to walk through one of his projects. I chose Drew because I believe that he is a really great example of how you should be walking through your projects. And a lot of times in the interview process, people are not prepared to do that. They don't know how to do that, or they haven't done it before and it's scary. So I wanted to give you an example of someone who I believe it does it at 100%. So you'll have the opportunity to watch that. We are going to craft some really intelligent and thoughtful questions for the interviewers. We're going to talk about those and what those look like. And then we're going to talk about the research phase and how to show up for an interview being your best self. Okay, so one of the most important things, if there's nothing that you take away from this entire presentation, the most important thing I want you to take away today, and write it down if you have to, is that the only job that you have for the first interview, the introductory interview, whether it's with a hiring manager, a recruiter, a software engineer, an admin, whoever it's with, your only job is to get that person on the other line to like you. Now, why is that? Because nobody in their right mind is going to get on a phone call and waste their time if they don't already know who they're speaking to and why. So, for an example, as a recruiter, I would come in and usually my day would be packed every 30 minutes with interviews. And there was never anybody on my calendar that I didn't know either had the background I was looking for, had the background, and maybe I had some questions about it, but they were worth talking to, or were completely aligned with the role that I had in front of me. There's never a time that I would schedule a phone interview with somebody that was going to be a waste of my time. So if you get a phone interview scheduled with a hiring manager, recruiter, admin, whoever it is from the company, they are deliberately and intentionally setting that phone call up with you and taking 15, 20, 30 minutes out of their day. So you have already basically, you're more than halfway there, right? You're about 70% there. They've seen your background, they've looked at your LinkedIn, they've looked at your resume, maybe potentially, but they've definitely looked at your LinkedIn, and they've decided that you are worthy of a slot on their calendar. So your only job is to show up and get this person to like you. How are you going to do that? We're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about not doing a personal pitch that goes on for 10 minutes, right? And not taking a deep breath. We are going to talk about dressing the part, right? And making sure that you show up professional. We are going to touch on making sure that you are prepared for the company that you're interviewing for and you're asking really good questions so that you're engaging with them. And then we're also going to talk about not showing up for an interview and not having done the research on who you're talking to, right? Looking at their LinkedIn and finding, what do I have in common with this human and how can I make this person like me so that I can get to the technical part, which is the fun part of the interview, right? Nobody wants to sell themselves. Nobody wants to be at this phase, right? But we all have to do it. It's part of the game. So we need to get this person to like us in order for them to pass us on to the next phase. Okay, so really quick, I am going to give you just a quick highlight of what I have pulled for research. So today, we are going to be doing an interview with Spotify, and Drew is going to be interviewing for a software role. And so what I've done is I have pulled out all of the highlights that if I were Drew, I would be focusing on, right? So what is the mission of Spotify, and do I align with that mission? So you can do this with every single company that you are interviewing with. What is their mission? What problem are they solving? Why do I care about that problem or that product? Right? What are their core values? Do I align with those? And maybe I look at their core values and I almost alter some of my answers to be pretty on point with what their mission and their values are, if it's true. And then I have Crystal here. So I'm going to pretend that I'm Crystal today, and she's a senior recruiter at Spotify based in New York. And I'm going to make sure that I've done my research on Crystal, right? And where is her background? What can I ask her? What do I have in common with her? How can I get Crystal to like me in order to shoot me over to the technical folks where I can really shine? And then I have a little snippet of a job description over here. So for each interview that you have, you should always have the job description in front of you. And you should always be highlighting the specific pieces that really stand out. So the pieces that they are looking for, right? So if I take a really quick glance at this job description, this is not the one that Drew's interviewing for, but this was one that I could find today. So, they are passionate about crafting really clean code. They are working in a microservices environment. So maybe I look that up and maybe just be able to talk a little bit intelligently about it. Let's see. They are looking for somebody with some experience in CI and CD. So continuous integration and continuous deployment. Maybe I don't know how to use that, but maybe I could look it up just to be a little bit more intelligent on the job description. So it's a matter of ripping apart the job description and identifying what you don't know, being clear on that, doing a little bit of research, and then really highlighting what you do know and what you are bringing to the table. Okay. So how do you build your confidence? One of the biggest things that I think is important here is that the only way to be truly, truly, truly confident when going into an interview is by being over prepared, right? And I think if you can be over prepared, there is no room for error with confidence. You're not going to stumble your words. If you practice, if you do mock interviews, if you show up having done all the research and having answers to all these specific questions, you are going to kill this interview. And that is your job, right? Is to be prepared. I've been in recruiting a long time, and there's a lot of times where I'll get on interviews and people will say to me, "What company is this again that I'm interviewing for?" There's nothing that infuriates a recruiter more than that. Don't be that guy. Don't be that girl. Do your research, take notes, show up prepared, and make it to the other side of the interview. If you can make it to the other side, the rest of it is cake, right? Because the technical part is what you're actually interested in. You've already sold yourself. The recruiter or the hiring manager, whoever you're interviewing with, is now rooting for you internally. So the only job that you have to do is get over that hump. And that's what we're going to work through today. Okay. And then lastly, a lot of times when I'm interview prepping people, they don't have questions already written out, ready to ask the recruiter. So as a recruiter, specifically a technical recruiter, I will tell you, it's also very frustrating when I'm interviewing you and you have, when I say, okay, the floor is now yours. Please tell me what questions you have for me. And you say, meh, I think you answered them all. Or I don't know, I don't really have any questions. You want to be engaging. You want me to remember you. You want me to move you to the next phase. So you're going to want to ask me thoughtful questions. Some of those thoughtful and intelligent questions could be as simple as, tell me about a day in the life of as a software engineer. What does the culture feel like there at Spotify? I mean, I can read what it is, but what does it feel like? Why did you choose Spotify over all the other companies that you could work at? Why did you, as software engineer, hiring manager, recruiter, choose to work at Spotify? So really digging deep, giving yourself a little bit of a break on the interview side and flipping the script, right? And then letting them do a little bit of talking and talking about their journey and being invested and interested in the person that you're talking with. So having those questions outlined ahead of time is going to help you be super confident and very prepared. Okay, so just a quick quote here for you. I am going to check the chat really quick, and then I wanted to kind of rush through those because Drew is really the part that I wanted you guys to see. But I am here also to answer any questions that you might have. Let me just take a quick look and then we'll switch gears here. Okay, so looks like we have people from all over, which is awesome. Someone from Lincoln, Nebraska. That is a first. Thank you on the dogs. More pics of dogs, please. I can do that. Let's see here. Okay, so Alfredo put a good question in there. How much time should we expend asking questions? Sometimes I don't know if I'm asking too much or too little. So my guidance on that is have 3 questions ready to go and be prepared to deliver 3 questions. Don't ask me any more than 5. Because you want to save some of those questions should be very technically specific, which you can use during your software engineering or on-site interviews. When you're having a technical discussion, you're going to want to have some of those questions, but your basic questions should be anywhere from 3 to 5. So have 5 prepared and be ready to deliver 3. And then the other 2 can just be on backup. Okay, Mary, so you have over 200 applications in your queue and a recruiter calls unexpectedly. How do you answer? How do you answer? Do you have any questions for me? I don't even remember who they are. Okay, Mary, this is going to be the biggest piece of advice in your life. Never, ever, ever, ever answer the phone ever unless you know who it is. Especially when you're job searching. That person can leave you a message, they can send you an email, or they can send you a text. Never let yourself answer the phone blindly like that. That is just setting yourself up for failure. And to be frank, that recruiter should not just be calling you out of the blue. That's not the way that it should happen. So they can text you, they can leave a message, or they can email you. So if she calls you or he calls you and they leave a message, then you can call them back once you've done the research on who they actually are. So never, never, never answer the phone if you don't know who it is. All right, so in sake of time here, I'm going to answer these last 2 questions and then I'm going to switch it over to Drew. So Dylan, I've literally had a phone interview with a person who wasn't even the recruiter for the role and told me they wouldn't be able to answer many of my questions. So what do I do in that situation? In that situation, you say not a problem at all. I am happy to save my questions for the next interview. But in doing a little bit of research, if that recruiter has been there for at least 6 months, it's fair to say, I know you said you can't answer any of my questions, and to table those for a later interview, which is perfectly fine, but I would love to ask you just one question. Could you tell me a little bit about how you enjoy working at said company since you've been there for almost 6 months? And then Chantel, what do you like to expect from the candidate when you ask for salary expectations? Chantel, I'm going to save that one to the very end because Drew is actually going to do that for us as one of the last questions in our presentation. So let me stop sharing and I'm going to let Drew, actually, you know what? I'm going to start here. Give me 1 second here. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. And we are going to get rolling here. All right, Drew, are you ready for me?
Oh, let's do this.
All right, awesome. So I am, just for context, I am a recruiter from Spotify. This is our very first interview. Drew has never met me. I've never met Drew, and we are diving in. What I have told Drew is that this is going to be a behavioral specific interview. And I am going to ask him some basic get to know you questions. And I'm also going to ask him some star or par questions, which is the behavioral, tell me about a time kind of questions. I'm going to ask him one of those. And then I have also given him a heads up that I would like to walk through one of his projects. So today he is going to be ready for me as a Spotify recruiter to help me understand one of his projects that he built. So let's get rolling. So thank you so much, Drew, for being here today. I really appreciate you. How is your day going so far?
It's going great. Thank you so much for meeting with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to be here. So in preparation for this interview, I do have your resume here up in front of me, and I also have your LinkedIn profile. And I've had an opportunity to kind of walk through your background and your projects, which all look amazing. And I'm really excited to just kind of hear from you in your own words, who you are, how did you get into software engineering, and where, what you're looking to do next.
Absolutely. So my name is Drew. I'm a front-end software engineer based in New York City. I'm currently working at a data automation platform called Big Eye that's based out of San Francisco. And in this role, I have the responsibilities of building out a React component library of malleable and reusable components that can be easily implemented throughout the site, as well as writing unit tests on said components and making sure they're all implemented properly. Prior to this role, I worked on the marketing side of tech for about 4 years straight out of college. I went to NYU Stern and majored in marketing, and then immediately started working for Microsoft. And through those years of marketing, I eventually transferred my way up into a web development manager position, where I was tasked with the responsibility of creating custom websites for a myriad of clients. And in this role, I really served as the last point of contact between the development and design and then the client. So I often found myself needing to make quick fixes to the code, updating styles, fixing typos, all that good stuff. And rather than constantly pinging my development team to get that done, I took it upon myself to quickly learn some, basic HTML, CSS, and vanilla JavaScript. That way I could get the job done myself. And in this, I really found a passion for software engineering. It became a really exciting thing for me, and it really empowered me to be able to have that control in my own hands. And so that brought me where I am today. I went back to school, went to App Academy's full stack software engineering program, and got my second degree, as you will. And yeah, that brought me to where I am today. I'm a full stack software engineer with a design eye and a marketing mindset. And I'm super excited to learn more about this opportunity at Spotify with you today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was such a great background and kind of filled in any gaps that I had or any questions I had. So tell me, I'm just curious, Drew. It sounds like you have such an awesome background. You've got great work experience. And it sounds like you were able to kind of have that aha moment, like, this is where I need to jump off the ledge, go back to school, do App Academy, and really hone in on my skills. How did you know that you were going to be a really good software engineer? Like, what kind of skills do you bring to the table? Give me maybe some of your strengths that stick out that allowed you to know that you were going to do well in this field.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that what really sets me apart as a software engineer is with that marketing background that I have, and all that client management experience that I have. I have really solid interpersonal skills and communication that really make me an asset to the team. So I have experience managing design and development teams. And so I have experience on both sides of the coin as someone being managed and as a manager. And I understand the necessary components to communicate effectively and really bring that open communication and honesty, and how important that is in building projects. And then secondly, I think that I bring a really creative spin and a really big enthusiasm along with that creativity. I get really excited about projects and really go all in and put my hardest work in. And I think that the gears are always turning, trying to optimize and make things better and more efficient. And I think that my creative side really, really lends itself well to those skills.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Those are some really neat things that I'm not able to see from your resume. So I appreciate the detail. So I am assuming that you are interviewing pretty heavily at this time. And that said, I would love to know why would you want to work here? Why Spotify? Tell me why you might be passionate about working here with us at Spotify.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that there are two main reasons why I'm really interested in Spotify. For me, with web design and web development, the most important factor at all is creating flawless and beautiful and stunning web experiences for the clients or any project that I'm working on. And for me personally, Spotify is at the epicenter of beautiful web design. Every single piece of content that Spotify releases is engaging and interactive and fun and sincere. And I want to be a part of that and have the opportunity to learn from all of the marketers and designers and developers and thinkers at Spotify that are creating all of these projects. So for me, the beautiful web design and the consistent creativity and playfulness that Spotify is able to institute into all of their web content is something that is at the forefront of my reason for wanting to work at Spotify. Secondly, this role is, as you know, front-end machine learning role. And while I have always had I've always been really interested in machine learning, it's something that's has not presented itself to me in my professional career very often. And so I'd love the opportunity to be able to work on the machine learning platform at Spotify and really learn from the people at the forefront of machine learning at Spotify, and get all that good knowledge, and work with some really incredible people.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for that context. I appreciate it. In sake of time, because I'm excited to walk through one of your projects with you today. I'm going to kind of dive right into the meat of this interview.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you don't mind, would you mind giving me, we talked about your strengths. We all have weaknesses. Some we're willing to share, some we're not. Is there one weakness that you'd be willing to share with me?
Yeah. So I think my biggest weakness is that I tend sometimes to get really excited about a project that I'm working in and dive straight in. And I've learned through my developing processes that it's so much better to plan 80% and code 20%. However, I have had a tendency in the past to get super excited, just dive right in. I'm super passionate, and that can sometimes lead to having to backtrack in your code. So I think that tendency, my enthusiasm for the work that I'm doing, can sometimes take me a step back. However, I've really learned from those mistakes in the past, and I'm like working to grow towards taking a deep breath, moving forward, writing things down, but right before I dive into coding.
Awesome. I love the passion. The passion would fit in really well here at Spotify. So I do have one question for you in regards to, just like a tell me about a time. So let's go through one of those. If you could tell me about a time, Drew, and this could be in your previous work experience, it could be at App Academy, really whatever you feel like pulling from. Could you tell me about a time where you endured a conflict? What was the conflict and how did you resolve that conflict?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my past role as web development manager at Linkgraph, we were creating a custom ebook for a client. And I was working with one designer, one developer, and myself, who was serving as like managing the process and consulting with the client. And as we were ideating the project, the designer and the developer had really contrasting opinions on what they felt the project should look like and feel like once we were completed. And things did essentially, as we were discussing, things got to a point that was like a little too heated. So at that point, I really needed to intervene and try to, resolve the situation. And I listened to each of their pitches. I asked them questions. I made them feel understood and that I valued their ideas. And rather than choosing sides throughout the process, I really worked to help us find a solid middle ground. And eventually we were able to combine the best elements of both ideas, as well as some of my own, and execute a really engaging ebook that was both interactive, had a really nice flow, and became a really powerful tool for our sales teams in generating new leads for the company.
Wow, that's a good story. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So I know that I think our recruiter coordinator had given you a heads up that we were going to ask you to walk through one of your projects today.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so I'd love to have you do that. It can be any project of your choice. And I will probably just interject with some questions if that's okay with you as well.
Of course.
Awesome. So I have enabled my screen for you to share whenever you are ready.
I'm getting a host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Just kidding. Let's see. Let me see if I can. Okay, try that.
There we go.
All right.
All right. Let me know when you can see my screen, everyone. Or Leanne, just Leanne.
Yep.
All right. So I think you might be familiar with the full stack project I'm going to show you today. I don't know, you might have seen it before. It is actually a full stack clone of Spotify. So I'm pretty sure you'll definitely, be pretty familiar with the product. And so yeah, I took the liberty of actually going ahead and building a quick agenda for us for this interview. So for this presentation that I can give to you. And so this is just a super quick timeline of what exactly we'll be talking through today. So I'll pretty briefly walk through the technologies that I've used, some 4 key features that I'd like to highlight. A bonus feature that is available within the walls of Spotify or Fabify, but not Spotify. Some key learnings I learned from the project. Some future and parts of the application that I've yet to build that I'm really excited to get completed. And then I've left some time for questions at the end. But yeah, as we just discussed, please intervene and stop me and ask any questions along the way if you'd like.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm excited.
Yeah, so here are the technologies I use. Here's my stack. We have a Ruby on Rails backend with PostgreSQL database. I'm using AWS S3 to host all of the audio and visual files online. I've got a React front end with Redux managing the state. There's obviously some HTML in there and CSS for styling. We've got Heroku hosting the platform, and then all of my code can, of course, be found on my GitHub profile. And I'd like to highlight these 4 key features that I've been able to get created for you. One, we have user authentication. I have show and index pages for my playlists, my songs, and my artists that I'd like to highlight. I also have playlist creation. You can update playlists, create them, as well as delete them if you'd like. And then we've got audio play, perhaps, the most important tenet of Spotify or Fabify. So yeah, without further ado, I'll hop right in. Here is my splash page, and we'll go ahead and just quickly create you. Oh, sorry. We'll just go ahead and quickly. Sorry, this is supposed to be on an incognito window. Let's just skip the user auth. Okay. So for the sake of time, anyway. So yeah, here we have the inside of Fabify. As you can see, we've got all of our songs rendered here, as well as a few different views. We can hop into the artist show right here, where we can see all of the specific songs associated with any given artist. We'll hop over here to the left sidebar and go through the specific playlists that can be found. We can, since we're on the playlist now, I'll go ahead and add, let's create a playlist. So we'll say today's Monday. So Monday Madness, March Madness on the brain, I guess. And so we got Monday Madness. You see it's initialized to an empty playlist. But from here, we can go back to our homepage, add any songs that we would like to the page. Let's go ahead and add My to Monday Madness. We'll come back and see that it's here. I know that you're a big Miley Cyrus fan, so let's go ahead and Wrecking Ball, and we'll go into Monday Madness, and there we go. And you know what? You've actually decided that you don't want My in there, so let's go ahead and remove it. And in fact, like, you're just over Mondays. You don't want to be reminded of it anymore, so let's just delete this playlist. Out of sight, out of mind. And so yeah, that is the bulk of Spotify. The last thing that I'd like to show you is the audio play, and I apologize, everyone might want to turn down their volume just a little bit, but here we go. We've got our songs, we can shuffle through them and listen to all of the different songs. You can pause and play, and it's not going to render multiple songs multiple times. You can also play songs directly from the show page, or back in one of these playlists, we can play music from here as well. So I'm sorry if your eardrums are all shot, but that is the bulk of Spotify or Fabify. From here, we can log out real quick and go back into, let me see if it'll actually, let's go ahead and do the user auth since I was able to get out of this incognito window. So we've got, we'll just say Leanne at Spotify.com. For sake of time, we'll copy and paste. We'll create a password, just pass, which we call you, Leanne, your birthday. There we go. And then we've got, here we go, we'll sign up. And unfortunately, we're going to render an error because we do have render error handling in here. So your password's not long enough. So we'll go ahead and create you a longer password, and we'll hop into your platform. And as you'll see, we rendered your name, your playlists are all customized to you and all that good stuff. So yeah, if we want to hop back now to the splash page, I'm happy to go over any key learnings or answer any questions. I'll just take a pause here to ask if you have any questions.
Yeah, this is amazing. Thank you for walking me through. And I've never had anybody create an agenda before in order to show me a project So that is fantastic. That really kind of helps me follow along and know what we're going to talk about. And so thank you for all of the effort you put in. Could we go back to the page where you have all the music,
Of course.
like the little squares? And I've got just a couple quick questions I wanted to ask you. So could you tell me a little bit about that fab mode up in the left-hand
Oh,
corner?
yep, absolutely. I'm forgetting one of the most exciting parts of my platform. So I really wanted to take a spin on the idea of a dark mode, light mode as good practice, potentially for the future, as those are becoming integrated into most platforms these days. However, Spotify is a famously, as you know, all dark platform, so there isn't really an option for light mode. So here, I thought I'd take a little spin on that and do a fab mode, which is, a good melding of Spotify and Fabify, which this is it's like I said, my spin on dark mode, light mode, but instead we've got, a really colorful interactive platform here that embodies what, Fabify is. So
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. And then are there any features on here that you have listed out or mapped out for the future?
yeah, so one of the main key things that I'd like to do is create a liked songs platform where you can go through here. Right now, I just have rendering all of the songs in the platform on the all songs page, but I'd like this to have a like songs feature. And I would create that similar to the way that I built the playlisting on this site. So essentially have a joins table that just connects a certain user with songs that they have liked, and do that from the back end, shoot it all up through the front end, and then be able to render specific songs that each user has liked throughout the platform.
Amazing. That's awesome. And then with your tech stack, bear with me. I'm just kind of, I'm not super technical. I'm just a technical recruiter, but I know enough. With your tech stack that you laid out for me, I appreciate that. Tell me a little bit about your choice in that. Was that something that you had to use, or did you choose that tech stack?
Yeah, absolutely. I can speak to why I chose each of these if you'd like. I
Yeah, that'd be
specifically went. Yeah, so I went with the PostgreSQL database because I wanted to work with an open source relational database. I went with relational as opposed to non-relational because I knew exactly what the structure of Fabify was going to be. Spotify was already laid out. I knew it was going to need songs, playlists, artists, and I know that non-relational databases have the benefit of being able to update and change the data framework as you move along. However, I knew that was not going to be necessary here. I really wanted to get some experience with AWS as it moves into the as we're moving forward. That's becoming really important to understand AWS. So I decided to host my files using AWS, and that was really, one of the main reasons I chose that. There's a lot of state going on throughout the site, and I knew that I would need to build functional reusable components, so I wanted to use React. However, without using a state management system like Redux, the managing all that state and having to send all of the data back up to the top every single time would get really complicated solely using React. So I wanted to implement Redux in to make it a smoother process, take advantage of things like global state that Redux allows us to do. HTML and CSS, CSS the standard just really needed to get that styling in there, and was able to do that effectively. I actually built out some of the pages using styled components as well, which is a plugin or a library for React. And I really enjoyed doing that. It was really nice to have all of the markup and styling all in one file, which allows that style, which is what styled components allows. And then, GitHub, just the standard, needed to host my platform somewhere and or host my code somewhere, and then Heroku as well to use a standard for hosting my site.
awesome. Thank you so much for walking me through that. That was
Problem.
perfect. And one last question that I had for you. I noticed that you mentioned on the agenda, and I apologize if you already went through this, but did you highlight any of your key learnings, like what you learned from the project?
Yeah, so I would, the number one thing I think I'd like to highlight from this project is I had a ton of fun building this project. It was really exciting. Like I said, I'm really passionate about visual design and creating digital experiences online. And I think that building a clone of Spotify really allowed me to do that. So unfortunately, when I first opened the project, I hopped in and started, let me build the web player, let me build the audio bar. And I didn't really map out the way that state was going to be moving through the platform. So for me, my largest key learning throughout the process was to make sure that I'm planning for a large portion, make sure everything is clearly mapped out. And for me, that means pen to paper, draw a visual diagram of the way that data will be moved through the site, to make sure that I understand all of those good bits before I start building components that are all connected, and then having to backtrack and try to follow state throughout the site in a way that is not entirely manageable. So for me, my biggest takeaway is definitely plan, and take that enthusiasm, and before you hop into the code, just take that enthusiasm and put it to paper before you hop into your computer.
Awesome. That was such a good takeaway. Thank you so much. Great. Awesome. So if you want to unshare your screen, I have just a couple more things for you, and then we can wrap up here. I really appreciate you walking me through that. That was fantastic. And so you may have to do that again with the tech team, and I apologize. They may have some further questions for you, but overall, that is exactly what I was looking for today. So before I open up the floor to you, Drew, just to ask me a couple questions, I wanted to ask you one last thing. We didn't get to talking about your salary yet. What are you looking for as far as a base is concerned for this role?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for me personally, I'm really at this point trying to find a really solid culture fit and a team that works well for me and I will work well with. I think that from what I know at a larger perspective about Spotify in general, I think that I would be great for the culture of the team. But obviously, it's super important, to connect with team members. And really get involved. And I'd love to discuss salary once we're a little further down along the line. I've done a good bit of research on Glassdoor and other sites like that, and all of the ranges of salaries that I'm seeing that are for a position like this at Spotify, I'm super comfortable with, and I'm absolutely confident that we'll be able to, find some solid middle ground, and create a really amazing contract once we get to that point.
Awesome. And so I'm not sure what you have found with your research, but in order for me to move you forward to the next phase, which I would love to have you talk to our technical team, I just want to make sure that we are at least in the same range. So our salary for this specific position on the AI team runs anywhere from 95 to 108. Is that something that's within your range at this time?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, once we get to that point, I'd love to, make this into like a larger dialogue about all of the nitty gritty. But that range absolutely works for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And
Of course.
lastly, are there any questions that you have for me about Spotify? I can't answer too much technically on the role, but I can answer just kind of some basic questions if you have any at this time.
Yeah. So I have a few. After speaking with some engineers that work at Spotify, I understand that a software engineer's success at Spotify is determined by a few factors, by their social educational contributions, by showcasing their growth mindset and all that good stuff. Since I come from a marketing background, I'm used to being measured on things like marketing qualified leads and email conversions and all that good stuff. And I'm just curious what your advice would be to be someone that's moving from more of like a not data driven but like numerical value associated with a role, to more of a like conceptual and growth mindset goals, to set up an incoming software engineer for success in that role.
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. Let me think about that for a minute. So the first thing that comes to mind would be, I feel as though here at Spotify, everyone has both personal and professional goals, and we really all focus to kind of help each other and build each other up. And so I would be, if I were you, I would set aside some personal goals that you want to accomplish within Spotify, whether that's learning, a new technology or figuring out an old code base or doing some problem solving that you haven't done before. And then I don't know. That's a really good question. I think the biggest thing that you could do is maybe do some research before you talk to the technical team on how to be the most productive that you can be in a live agile software environment. So we run agile and we have a backlog full of things that need to get done. And so how do you operate in that type of environment and what measurements are taken? And I think that would be super helpful. So being able to contribute to retrospectives, right? And being able to contribute to stand-ups and then deploying code either on time, early, or helping solve impediments on the team. So I think overall, those are some things that you could do to really ramp yourself up and make sure that you are held accountable.
Amazing. Yeah, that's super helpful. And I think another question I would have is I saw that I took the liberty of checking out your LinkedIn, and I saw that you've worked for some really amazing brands like the New York Times, and some other companies like that. And so I'm just curious, what do you think like working at Spotify makes it special from working from some of these other like really amazing companies that you worked for in the past?
Yeah, I think that I feel like this company for me has been so fun to work at because everybody is extremely innovative. And so therefore it allows for people to have a very open mind where your thoughts and ideas that you bring to the table are welcomed, and in fact they're encouraged, right? And so instead of saying, wow, that person's just a junior engineer, they don't know what they're talking about, I feel like every idea that I have brought in, or way to do things better than I was doing them yesterday, has been really honored and valued. And so my opinion and my voice really is heard here, and it feels like a true collaborative team environment. Like it just feels really genuine.
Amazing. All right, well, I know we're running short on time, so I'll let you go. I really appreciate you connecting with me today. This has been really amazing to learn more about the role.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for your time. And we will be in touch with next steps.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thank you, Drew. Navi, I know you wanted to open it back up for some Q&A.
Yes, I was thinking of, I know everyone must have so many questions. That was a lot. Thank you so much, Drew. That was really phenomenal. I think there was so much nugget. Like, I feel like this entire video needs to be rewatched a number of times. There's just so much knowledge in so many like pieces. I'm gonna try to see if we can work with our editor to maybe just make it a little bit more digestible. But that was awesome. Loved everything that you guys both did. I was thinking maybe opening it up to everyone. I know that there must be tons of questions, so we could either do this through the chat, guys, or if you want to open up your mic and just ask a question, open up your mic, camera, and ask Leanne a question directly yourselves.
So, so Tika had a question, and I'll let Drew answer this one. If you don't have an opportunity to share your screen while walking through a project more high level, do you have any advice on how to go about it?
Yeah. So I think for me, and I don't know if anyone, something that I like to integrate into my presentations that I build for all of these different, for like different specific companies that I'm working on, is taking their like core values and integrating them into your communication. It's like, I feel like it works with the recruiter's subconscious. Like the 5 core values at Spotify are like innovation and collaboration and like sincerity and playfulness. And I don't know, those are 4 of the 5. But I specifically said all of those words while giving my presentations. That way the recruiter is like hearing me say those words and like hearing and connecting a culture fit without me ever have to be me being like, I am sincere, I am innovative, I am collaborative. It just seems so much, it actually comes off as so much more sincere and authentic when you're just organically saying the words. And it's not really organic because I like scripted into the huge doc that I made when, preparing for this interview. But I think that little things like that are really helpful with just like building some rapport, and really showing that you're that culture fit with the recruiter. For a high level overview, I think that it really depends if you're talking to someone super technical or more behavioral. So like I know this conversation with Leanne was like more of a behavioral conversation. So like I didn't get into the nitty gritty of the tech stack and things like that until she specifically asked about it. Or even like walking, I tried to be very like, anyone that knows anything about how a computer works can understand what I'm talking about right now. And so that being, if you're talking to someone on the phone though that's like head of engineering or CTO or like clearly is like knows everything about technology, like I would try to show off like I chose React because and honestly give a better answer than I did because and like be really more technical, show like the specific benefits and like key traits of all of these technologies, and maybe even like highlight some cool like features you did. Like I would maybe highlight like my shuffle button and things like that, because that required a lot more complex logic than just like rendering a specific component.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Drew. Let's see. The next question is, I did not have the best 2020, even had to take some time off. Now have a gap in my job learning history that I'm unsure how to justify. Any advice? Vanessa, I think I can answer that one. I think that most people are going to have a gap for 2020, so don't overthink it, don't stress it. I think what I'm hearing out there is that recruiters are being much more laid back on 2020 because we're all kind of in the same boat. So I wouldn't overthink it completely. If you want to give me any more context, I'm happy to help. But I think overall, don't worry about the gap in there. It's fine to say that 2020 was a difficult year, and however your story rolls out will be sufficient.
I think also like it's all about how you frame it. I've with all of these interviews I've had, no one has asked me about a gap. I got let go because of COVID in I guess almost a year ago in March. I guess that was May. But I just was like, oh, I didn't say I got let go or anything. I said I had this position and then I went to school. And then no one, like, you just, you're not talking about it. You don't have to speak about it. And since you did go to school, or maybe I don't know exactly what your situation is, but there's a way that you can frame it to where it's like, I got let go and I'm not working. But you don't have to frame it that way. You can frame it in like a positive way, that I went back to school and I learned all these things and I'm learning new technologies and this is exciting. And I don't think that, in my experience, no one has asked that question, but that's something that I was absolutely concerned with too, that people were going to ask that, but they never did.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Drew. Let's see. The next question is, if an interviewer's demeanor is very neutral, actually I skipped Thomas, I'll go back. Blase, how do you recommend striking the right tone between enthusiastically pitching yourself, but also matching their energy? That's a good question. I can take a stab at this one. I feel like it's one of those things where you have to kind of know your audience, right? And know your room and kind of feel it out. Sometimes I've had some people say that their recruiters showed up in a bad mood, or showed up on, the software engineer had to show up at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon and didn't want to be there, and you could tell, right? And so sometimes that's just going to happen because it's part of life. And internally, not everybody wants to be on the interview sometimes because they've got a million other things going on. So I think that does happen. My advice to you would be to not match their energy, but to do the opposite. And don't be annoying, but be really positive. Just stay as positive as you can, stay as mature as you can, stay on track, try to make it to the point, get across what you need to, and get that person to like you however you can in order to move to the next phase. Drew, did you have any thoughts on that question? I didn't want to leave you out there.
No, yeah, I think exactly what you said is sort of the idea that I would follow. I think sometimes you can tell that a recruiter there is like there to get to know you and like wants to build a connection and see if you're a good fit. And sometimes they're there to ask specific questions. And I think that you do sort of have to just, go off, match the vibe. However, I totally have been in that situation where they're being very cold. and it's really uncomfortable because I'm like the opposite of that, especially in an interview. But I think that like at the end of the day, like being authentic is really gonna be helpful as well. Like, you know, if you're super bubbly, like don't be grumpy because the other person's grumpy. Like kill them with kindness, you know?
Yep, exactly. Don't let anyone drag you down. All right, Thomas has 2 questions. How do you recommend approaching interviews beyond the initial stage, really clinching that final level fit? Um, yeah, I think that for me, my advice would be, um, it would still be to be as prepared as you possibly could be for a new round of people. So whenever I'm prepping people, normally I will have them send me over the job description, the company, and who they're interviewing with. And you really want to rip all of those things apart, because maybe by the 3rd interview, you're interviewing with a couple of software engineers. And what do you have for questions for them, right? What thoughtful and intelligent and really good questions do you have for them that are not just the regular everyday questions that people are asking? So I would say be creative. Find something that you have in common with these people by doing your research, and really asking questions that will make people be like, wow, that was really thoughtful. They've done their homework in order to get to this phase of the interview, and they're not just showing up to show up. That would be my guidance.
Yeah, I would also say, if you can, like I write down all my questions in order to try to make it a conversation, because you ask questions sometimes knowing exactly what they're going to say or largely what they're going to say. And so like having a follow-up question prepared for a question, it makes it look like it's on the fly, but it's not, because you already knew, you know, I asked like Leanne, like what it was like working at these other companies. I knew she was going to be like, Spotify is different because of XYZ. Like have a, you know, prepared question that's, you know, a little general based off of that, and make the questions more of a conversation than like I'm going off a checklist, because it just shows you're like more engaged and more interested and have done your research if it feels like more of a conversation. And it'll be more comfortable for the recruiter as well.
Yeah, exactly. And to Drew's point as well, the one thing that I love is when you smile during a video interview, like I can feel it as the recruiter. Like I want to feel that you are happy to be there too. I know Tika's on here as well. And this morning I was prepping her, and her smile is contagious. It just makes you feel alive, right? And so you want to do your part in making the recruiter feel alive by engaging and smiling and being warm as well. So that's another way to kind of, I don't know, like, I don't care how bad of a mood you're in. If you're on an interview with someone and they're continually smiling and excited to be there, like they're not going to stay in that mood for too long. Otherwise, they're going to be awkward. Okay, let's see. Chris has a question. In terms of questions to ask of a recruiter at the end, would they know how much about their hires after they get through the entire process? Could I ask something like, can you describe one of your more successful hires? Were they promoted? Do they still work at Spotify? So my advice on that, Chris, would be to ask it in a different way. I would say, can you tell me about, and normally this would be to somebody who's on the software engineering team, but can you tell me about somebody that works at Spotify who maybe came in with a background similar to mine, who is doing really well? Why are they doing well? What makes them stand out as an engineer? And could you tell me a little bit about their journey as a software engineer with Spotify? Let's see here. I think that's it for questions. Anybody else just want to jump in? I know we're running over, and I apologize for that. I figured that we might. Can you ask about the size of their candidate pool and how you compare? Bill, no. You don't want to ask that question. It's just, I would say the one thing that you can say is, how far along are you in the interview process with this role? When could I expect to hear back as far as next steps go, or something along those lines? But you never want to ask like where you are in the reins, like how do I compare or anything like that. It just kind of is awkward. JT, would it be better to schedule follow-up interviews in the immediate future, 1 to 5 business days, or 7 to 14? In my opinion, I would say 1 to 5, knock it out, get it done, build a relationship, and be excited for the next role. 7 to 14, I feel like they could easily just kind of move on and have too many things going on. I don't know. That's my advice. I would say the sooner the better. What are your thoughts on that, Drew? The last question.
Yeah, so if I can, I mean, full disclosure, everyone, I was interviewing at Spotify, and then the day before my final interview, I got an email that they hired someone else, which was like a very big bummer. And I didn't schedule like too far in advance. But I did like give myself time. Obviously, like I had to prep a 30-minute presentation, and there were also technical interviews, and we knew I was gonna have behavioral questions. So like I needed time to prep. And this is the other thing too, like I felt so prepared that even though like it was really upsetting when they sent me the email, it like I wasn't that upset because it was like I did everything that I possibly could have. Like, this is not your fault. And so my advice would be like, do all of this practice, like have your pitch down, have all these questions down beforehand. So that way when a recruiter reaches out to you, you're like, yeah, I'm available in 2 days. And you're confident then. You know, you can spend those 2 days like doing the personalization research and adding all the personal bits in there, but like have your framework so solid that like it's like, oh, can I call you in 30 minutes? And you're like, sure, because you're just like so confident with what you're doing. Like Leanne asked me about this like a couple days ago, and I was like, yeah, let's do it, just because I feel like so comfortable doing this now because I've done it a few times that it's like the recruiter wants to talk, I'm like, sure, when you want to do it, I'm ready this afternoon, because that'll just make it easier for you when it's like you are put to the like, you know, you don't want to push out too far because, you know, there are timelines these companies are trying to stick to. That being said, like 7 days out, like I think a week out is totally fine, but like sometimes you might be hesitant to do like 3 weeks out because that's super, you know, it's also completely different per company. But yeah, I think be ready for when it presents you, like you can handle it would be my advice.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Drew.
If you don't mind, I just want to jump in for a second. I actually really like that advice, Drew, because we talk to so many software developers who are sort of looking for work and particularly looking for their first engineering position. There's this trap that often happens where there's like a hero company, whether it was Spotify in your case, and you know you're really looking forward to getting that opportunity, and you've tried everything that you possibly can to make sure that you're moving through all the motions the correct way. And then when you don't get it, the setback that happens with a lot of people that I've seen is usually significant, where they don't so I actually really appreciate the fact that you look at it in terms of, hey, I did everything that I could have done and it didn't work, so you have no remorse, or you have no you know there's no you're not playing that blame game on yourself where, you know, it's like, I didn't get it, now what, now you're it's going to take you another week to apply to more opportunities. So I actually think that there's a lot of value here for how you guys apply to some of the roles, and how you take a look at setbacks and not being hired by that company that you really wanted.
I totally agree. Like, be so confident in yourself that like if something goes wrong, it is like their loss, not yours. Like, you didn't do anything wrong. They like they're missing out. Like that's the mentality. Like the confidence is so important.
Absolutely. Okay, perfect. I think we're about like 20 minutes over. This was awesome. How are you guys on time? Did you guys get through all the questions? I sorry, I wasn't walking through the chat.
No, you're good. Yes, we did. We made it through all the questions. So I think so. If anybody did not get their question answered, feel free to step up, but I think we got them all.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much for spending your vacation hours with us. Really appreciate it, Leanne. Drew, thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate it. And where's the best place for everyone to connect with you, with both of you?
I would say LinkedIn for me, probably the same for Drew.
Yeah, LinkedIn. I mean, you can follow me on Instagram, whatever you want to do. I'm here. My email, all's good.
Perfect. Awesome. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us. Have a good day, guys.
Yeah. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye, y'all.